A little girl's cry for help went unnoticed by everyone, except a German shepherd and a cop. What they uncovered would change everything. This is the story of how a dog and a determined officer saved a life when no one else cared. The cold winter air bit through the alleyway, and the snow fell gently, coating the world in a quiet white blanket. But the peaceful silence of the evening was far from comforting. In the middle of the narrow street, a small girl stood alone, her fragile figure hunched slightly, as if trying to shield herself from more than just the chill. Her hands clutched her stomach, her body trembling not from the cold, but from fear. Her dress, once a soft shade of pink, was now torn and stained, clinging to her small frame. The hem was uneven, ripped from the fabric, and dirt stained her once white stockings. Yet it was not her appearance that spoke the loudest, it was the look in her eyes. A deep, empty sorrow mixed with a terror too heavy for someone so young to carry. Behind her, the sounds of laughter echoed from the doorway of a nearby building. Her mother stood there, a smile on her face, completely oblivious to the child's suffering. The woman's face held no sign of concern, only a serene indifference as she gazed at her partner. The little girl wanted to scream, wanted to run, but she couldn't. Not anymore. Not after everything. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, a German shepherd named Rex and his partner, Officer Daniels, were on patrol. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked through the quiet streets, the rhythmic sound a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding in the alley. Rex, with his dark, intelligent eyes, was more than just a police dog. He was a trained detector, able to sense danger long before it revealed itself. His loyalty to Officer Daniels was unwavering, and over the years, the bond they shared had saved countless lives. Officer Daniels looked down at his partner, offering him a reassuring pat on the head. "How's the night treating you, buddy?" he asked, his voice warm yet filled with the weight of the night shift. Rex's ears perked up, sensing something in the air, something that made his posture stiffen. He looked around, eyes narrowing as he sniffed the air, his nose twitching as if picking up a faint scent. The officer, familiar with the dog's instincts, paused. Rex wasn't one to overreact, but when something caught his attention, it usually meant trouble. Daniel scanned the street, his senses sharpening. Everything seemed calm, almost too calm, but the unease in Rex's behavior told him otherwise. Without a word, he motioned for Rex to lead the way. The dog, eager to investigate, pulled ahead. His movements precise and focused as they moved closer to the alley. Rex's alertness only increased. The tension in the air was palpable, and Daniels knew that something wasn't right. As Officer Daniels and Rex neared the alley, the atmosphere seemed to grow heavier with each step. Rex's ears were flat against his head, and his tail was stiff. There was no mistaking it. Something was wrong. The quiet, dark alley seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy, and Daniels could feel the tension building. Without warning, Rex broke into a low growl, his body trembling with alertness. The officer quickly raised a hand, signaling for the dog to stay. But Rex wasn't interested in waiting. The dog's instincts were already in overdrive. He barked once, twice, his deep voice echoing down the alley. The officer's heart rate quickened. "What is it, boy?" he muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the shadows. And then he heard it, a soft sound that seemed to barely break. The silence of the night. A child's cry. A desperate, gut-wrenching cry. It cut through the stillness, and in that moment, everything changed. Rex, now more frantic, tugged at his leash, pulling Officer Daniels forward toward the source of the noise. The officer's pulse raced as he followed, each step drawing him closer to the sound of the girl's sobs. The cries were muffled, as though the child was trying to hold back her pain, but it was clear someone was hurting her, and no one was around to help. Rex continued to bark, louder now, as though trying to communicate a message Daniels couldn't ignore. The officer's grip tightened on the leash. It was clear that Rex had found something, and it wasn't just an ordinary search. Officer Daniels stopped dead in his tracks as the full weight of the situation sank in. His hand instinctively gripped Rex's leash tighter, the tension between them palpable. Rex had been trained to detect threats, drugs, explosives, violence, but the distress in his growl, the urgency in his barks, felt different. It was personal. The officer glanced down at his canine partner. The dog's eyes locked on him with unwavering trust. Daniels could see it in the dog's stance. Rex wasn't just reacting to the sound of the cries. He was trying to protect someone. The officer's breath hitched as he processed the situation. He could hear the faint cries growing louder now, more distinct, and his heart pounded in his chest. The alley was eerily silent except for the sound of the sobbing, and it sent a chill up his spine. It wasn't supposed to be like this. There were no reports of trouble in this area, no signs of a disturbance. But Rex's behavior was too obvious to ignore. Without a word, Daniels began moving forward, his steps deliberate but quick. His instincts as a law enforcement officer kicked in. He had to investigate, had to find the source of the cries. As he moved closer, the officer's mind raced with possibilities. What kind of situation had they stumbled into? Was someone in immediate danger? Was there something he was missing? Rex led the way, his pace quickening as he neared the alley's entrance. The cries grew louder, and the officer's resolve hardened. He wasn't going to let this child suffer alone. Not if he could help it. As Officer Daniels stepped into the alley, the cold air wrapped around him, but his attention was entirely consumed by what lay ahead. The cries were unmistakable now, a child's voice, weak and broken, calling out in pain and fear. He could see a figure hunched near the far corner, but it wasn't the girl he expected. Instead, it was a man, tall and imposing, standing over her like a shadow. The man's fists were clenched, his face twisted into a sneer of contempt at Daniels. Heart dropped. The child, barely visible behind the towering figure, trembled against the wall. She was so small, so fragile, and the sight of her, huddled in terror, hit Daniels like a punch to the gut. He instinctively reached for his radio. But Rex was already ahead, growling low, his hackles raised. The officer's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, his voice firm yet measured. "Hey, step away from her now," Daniels commanded, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The man turned slowly, his expression cold and defiant. For a moment, there was a tense standoff between them. Daniels, standing tall and confident, and the stepfather, who seemed far too comfortable with his power. The officer's eyes narrowed, taking in the man's posture, the way he seemed to exude a sense of control over the situation. It was clear this wasn't the first time he'd used fear to manipulate others. "Mind your business, officer," the man sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "She's my kid. I'll deal with her however I want." Daniels didn't flinch. "Not anymore," he replied, his voice hardening. "Step away from her." Now, the stepfather, now backed into a corner, hesitated for just a moment. His defiance faltered, and that was all Officer Daniels needed. He stepped forward, his presence commanding. "You're under arrest for child abuse," he said firmly, his voice unwavering. "You're not getting away with this." The man's face twisted into a scowl, but before he could respond, Daniels was already pulling out his handcuffs, securing him with a swift and practiced motion. Rex, still growling low, stood by Daniels, his gaze never leaving the man. The officer shot him a quick look of approval before turning back to the girl, who was now shaking uncontrollably against the wall. The little girl's sobs had softened, replaced by the occasional sniffle as the weight of her relief began to settle in. "Hey, you're safe now," Daniels said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Everything's going to be okay." The girl looked up at him, her wide eyes filled with fear, but also a flicker of hope. She didn't speak, but her tear-streaked face seemed to say it all. The police arrived to take the stepfather into custody. Officer Daniels stood with Rex by his side, watching the girl being escorted to safety. The ordeal had ended, but the impact would linger forever. Daniels patted Rex gently, his heart swelling with pride. The dog had sensed the danger long before anyone else, and his instincts had saved a life. As the ambulance pulled away, Daniels reflected on the importance of being vigilant. In a world that often turns a blind eye, sometimes it only takes one person and one dog to make a difference. Later, as the night grew quiet once more, Officer Daniels stood by the patrol car, Rex at his feet. The street was peaceful again, but the memories of the night would linger. The girl had found safety, thanks to Rex's instincts and Daniels' quick action.